Welcome back. It's time for Q&A Monday again, so let's get started. Wes asks, how do you submit questions? Well, Wes, thank you for reminding me. I forgot on the last video. So, right down here, submit questions to winninginthewind@gmail.com. It's on the screen instead of in the description, so I don't get a bunch of emails from the bots. When you ask a question, don't expect an email in response. Instead, watch for a video. Jerry asks, how are the questions selected? Well, for Q&A Monday, I try to answer all the questions that I get that I have any knowledge of. Now, if I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know, but that doesn't make for a very exciting video. So I tend to skip over the ones that I don't know and just send the inquirer an email back saying, I'm not the right guy. If you want to know the proper load for a 50 BMG shooting out of a Barrett M82A1, I have no idea. And I'm not going to pretend that I do. Let's start with some follow-up questions from the last video. James asks, what is the name of that lube again and where do you get it from? And then once you place the lube on your brass, do you let it dry and then load powder? Well, James, to answer the last question first, yes. Once I get that lube on there and let it dry, I go for the powder because it's ready to go. That's one of the cool things about it. The lube is called Neo Lube number 2. It's available on Amazon. I will put a link in the description so that you can find it. Let's do another follow-up question on Neo Lube. Lewis says, you mentioned using Neo Lube number 2. Have you tried using graphite powder on a bore mop? Just wondering how the two processes of adding graphite to the inside of case necks compares. Well, Lewis, I have not tried using graphite powder on a bore mop. I'm a little afraid of getting that stuff airborne, and I doubt breathing it is very good for me. Now, I do use graphite powder in certain ways, but I always put it in suspension with a liquid, just for safety's sake. Dan asks, do you find Neo Lube number 2 works better on case necks than dipping in dry graphite? Well, Dan, I've never dipped case necks in dry graphite. I've only used HBN a few times, and I do like the Neo Lube better. All right, here's another follow-up question. Lexi50 asking about my comment about 284 drivers backing down on the speed. Backing down to what? Well, most of the 284 drivers that I know that are backing down into the 2700s. They are below 2800 now with their loads. I've been running 2810, 2815 for quite some time, and I'm going to do some experimentation down there as well. There might be a little precision to be had, and any precision is good precision. All right, let's get to some new questions. This one's from 360 Whitey from the comments. Do you have any thoughts or experience with lead sleds for side-end load development? Just curious to hear from a professional. Well, you got the wrong guy. I have never used a lead sled. So I really don't know anything about them other than they are a very heavy steel object that keeps the rifle from moving around too much. The question that I have about them and the concern I have about them is how do they interact with the rifle during recoil? If they absorb all the recoil and the rifle is not allowed to move whatsoever, your tune is going to be different than when you're shooting it from the shoulder. When the rifle moves, it changes the velocity just a little bit. It's not a huge amount, it's a couple feet a second, but it can change your tune because it changes the harmonics of the rifle. All right, last question for today. David asks, when starting a new round, which do you work first, powder load or bullet seating depth? Well, for accuracy's sake, and where I do long range primarily, I start with the powder load. It's important to get that ignition correct and get the powder burn nice and smooth so I get low extreme spreads, low standard deviations, and consistent launches in the harmonic windows of the barrel. It's one of those days. I can't speak today. Once I've done that, I can adjust the groups by adjusting the bullet's seating depth to stretch them out horizontally or vertically or make them small or make them big and round, whatever you want. You can do that with seating depth. But to get good velocity spreads, you have to do that with the powder. Well, actually the powder and primer combination. All right, guys, that's all the questions I have this week. If you have a question, please send them to winninginthewind@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to answer them in next week's video. See ya.